It was supposed to be just another interview. Nothing fancy. No frills. Just a young woman clutching her resume with trembling fingers, praying that this opportunity, might finally be the break she needed. She had rehearsed her lines 100 times the night before, staring into the cracked mirror of her small apartment, the city lights outside flickering like dying fireflies. She didn't expect luxury. She didn't expect kindness. What she got instead was something no one could have predicted. And it all started the moment she mistook a man in a crisp white shirt and rolled-up sleeves for the waiter, who, to her disbelief, wasn't a waiter at all, but someone who held her fate in the palm of his hand. Stick around, because what happened after that left the entire office stunned, and her life changed forever. Now, let me ask you something personal. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt like you didn't belong? Like every pair of eyes could see right through your borrowed shoes, your budget outfit, your carefully hidden desperation? If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or felt like the world was too big and too cold to care about someone like you, then this story is for you. Because what happened to Sarah that day wasn't just about mistaken identity. It was about something deeper. A moment that tested her heart, her humility, and her strength. And if you stay with me until the end, I promise you'll get the answer to the question that brought you here. What really happened after the poor girl mistook her new boss for a waiter? We're not just telling a story today. We're stepping into a journey that hits home for anyone who's ever struggled to rise above their circumstances. And don't worry, I won't drag this out or make you wait forever for the twist you came for. But here's the master move you have to watch closely. Every small detail in the beginning holds a clue to what happens later. That one wrong assumption. That one awkward moment. It all spirals into something bigger than anyone in the building could have seen coming, including Sarah herself. Now, let's rewind just a little. Picture this. Downtown Chicago, Monday morning, the kind of day where everything feels possible and impossible at the same time. Sarah Brooks was 24, broke, and tired of pretending she wasn't. She'd been laid off from 2 part-time jobs in the past month, and the last $5 in her purse were just enough for a train ride and maybe a coffee, if she skipped lunch. But that didn't stop her from showing up for the biggest interview of her life at a company she'd only ever dreamed of working for, Evolve Tech, a rising startup everyone on LinkedIn was buzzing about. Now here's something you need to know about Sarah. She wasn't the loudest in the room. She didn't come from wealth or connections. But what she lacked in privilege, she made up for in grit. She had this quiet resilience, like someone who's been knocked down so many times that getting up became second nature. She wasn't perfect, but she was real. And that made what happened next even more unbelievable. When she stepped into the lobby, polished marble floors reflecting the city skyline, she could feel her nerves unraveling. She was early, of course, too early. And as she stood there, unsure of where to go, a man approached. Clean-cut, tall, with rolled-up sleeves and a coffee in hand. He looked relaxed, like he belonged there, but didn't wear a name badge like the receptionists. So when he smiled at her, friendly and casual, Sarah did what seemed natural. She handed him her resume and said, "Hi, I think I'm supposed to meet someone for an interview. Could I get a glass of water while I wait?" And that, right there, is where everything changed. He didn't correct her. He didn't laugh. He simply nodded, walked away, and returned moments later with a cold bottle of water. Still not a word about who he was. Still, no hint of the truth. She thanked him, genuinely, and sat down, reviewing her notes, heart pounding. A few minutes passed before another employee came to escort her to the 32nd floor, the executive suite. And when the doors of the elevator opened, guess who was sitting at the head of the long glass table? Yeah, you guessed it. That same man. The one she thought was a waiter. Only now he wasn't holding water. He was holding her resume. And the expression on his face? Calm. Measured. But with a flicker of curiosity, maybe even admiration. This is where most people would freeze. Or run. But what Sarah did next? That's where the real story begins. You see, life has a funny way of putting us in situations that test our character before we even know what's at stake. And for Sarah, this moment, this innocent misunderstanding, would unlock something far bigger than a job. She had no idea she was about to challenge every assumption in that room. No idea that the man across the table, who everyone respected and feared, had his own story, a past he'd buried, a side of himself the world had never seen. Until now. So, if you've ever wondered what would happen if a poor girl walked into the lion's den and accidentally called the king a servant, you're in the right place. Because what followed after that was something even Hollywood couldn't script. Power dynamics shifted. Secrets came to light. And in the middle of it all, one woman found herself standing at the center of a storm that would force her, and everyone around her, to question who they really were beneath the titles, the clothes, the expectations. You won't want to miss this. Because right when Sarah thought things couldn't get more awkward, the boss leaned in and said something that changed everything. But I'll tell you what he said in just a moment. First, let's go back to the day Sarah's world began to unravel, in the best and worst way possible. Sarah's heart dropped like a stone the moment she recognized the man behind the glass table. Her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and sheer panic. She sat down slowly, forcing a polite smile, hoping he wouldn't remember her face, wouldn't remember she'd asked him for water just 20 minutes earlier. But deep down, she knew he remembered. His eyes said everything. Calm, unreadable, but not unseeing. "Ms. Brooks," he said, his voice cool, professional. "Welcome. I'm Nathan Hale, founder and CEO of Evolve Tech." Just like that, the air in the room shifted. The other interviewers, men and women in tailored suits, digital tablets poised in their hands, didn't seem to notice the awkwardness. But Sarah felt it in every inch of her skin. Her palms were sweaty, her throat dry again. She tried to focus, to reset her brain and act like she hadn't just made the most humiliating mistake of her life. She reminded herself, this was her chance. The moment she'd been preparing for. And if she let embarrassment ruin it, she might not get another. What Sarah didn't know was that Nathan Hale wasn't just a tech entrepreneur or the latest darling of Forbes and CNBC. He was a man with layers, deep ones. His rise to success wasn't born out of privilege. His story wasn't splashed across the internet, but those who'd worked with him knew there was more behind that poker face charm. Rumors around the office said he started as a barista in a small cafe, worked nights coding apps no one downloaded, faced rejection after rejection before striking gold with a virtual assistant software that now powered thousands of businesses. And yet, despite the fame, the money, and the glossy media profiles, Nathan was still known for walking the floors of his company without a title on his chest, dressing like the interns, listening more than he spoke. But why? Some said it was humility. Others believed it was strategy. Maybe even a test. And if it was a test, Sarah had just failed it before she even knew she was being graded. Still, the interview began. Questions flew at her like darts. Technical scenarios, teamwork challenges, high-pressure hypotheticals. But Sarah held her own. She didn't have the fanciest credentials, but she had experience. She spoke about late nights balancing work and school, about teaching herself software systems through YouTube tutorials when she couldn't afford classes. She spoke with passion, not polish. And for the first time in weeks, she felt like she wasn't pretending to be someone else. All the while, Nathan watched. Silent but alert, measuring her not just by her answers, but by the grit in her voice, the way she carried herself after the awkward start. And slowly something shifted. He leaned forward, interjected once or twice, not to trap her but to push her deeper. He wanted to know what she would do with pressure. Not just technical pressure, but personal discomfort. Sarah felt the tension crackling like static, yet she stayed composed, her voice steady even as her insides twisted. Meanwhile, in another part of the building, a very different conversation was taking place. Two senior executives, Lena, head of operations, and Marcus, from product design, were talking in hushed tones about the recent hiring freeze. There were whispers about a major acquisition in the works, one that could change the company's direction. But something about the deal felt off. Lena had seen numbers that didn't line up. Project budgets were being shifted. Top engineers were suddenly quiet, and a few had even quit unexpectedly. At first, she thought it was just corporate growing pains. But now something deeper was at play. And Nathan Hale, for all his calm demeanor, seemed increasingly secretive about what was coming. Some believed he was just protecting company interests. Others weren't so sure. Back in the interview room, as Sarah wrapped up her final answer, Nathan set down the tablet and looked her square in the eye.
Thank you, Sarah.
That'll be all for now. His tone was polite, firm. She stood, thanked everyone, and walked out with her head high, but her stomach in knots. Had she ruined everything by that first mistake? Or had she somehow impressed them by recovering? She didn't know. But as she left the building, she saw him again. This time, not in a meeting room, but through the floor-to-ceiling window of a private lounge upstairs. He was watching her, not in a creepy way, more like curious, intrigued, as if she had sparked something he hadn't felt in a long time. Later that night, Sarah returned to her apartment. Her noisy, third-floor walk-up where the radiator hissed and the neighbors fought too loud through the walls. She took off her shoes, opened her cheap laptop, and checked her inbox. Nothing. She refreshed it again and again, but still nothing. She told herself not to get her hopes up, even as her heart clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, something was beginning. And she wasn't wrong. While she stared at her screen, halfway through a second-hand pizza slice, a message pinged through, an internal note from someone inside Evolve Tech. No name. Just a line. He noticed you. You'll hear from us soon. Don't tell anyone. The next morning, Nathan walked into the executive floor, early as usual, coffee in hand. But this time, he wasn't alone. His longtime assistant, Daniel, handed him a printed document with a redacted email thread. It was internal, sensitive, and someone had been leaking information to outside investors. Nathan's eyes narrowed. He didn't say a word, but his next meeting was called in secret, behind locked doors. Whatever was happening at Evolve Tech wasn't just about a hiring decision anymore. And somehow, whether she realized it or not, Sarah Brooks had just stepped into the middle of something much bigger than herself. And then came the call. 2 days after the interview, Sarah was washing dishes when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She picked it up, heart pounding. The voice on the other end was crisp, official. Ms. Brooks, we'd like to invite you to a second interview. This one will be a little different. Before she could ask what that meant, the line disconnected. Sarah didn't know it yet, but the next time she stepped into Evolve Tech, nothing would be as it seemed. The job was still on the table, but now, so were secrets, agendas, and a quiet war brewing inside the walls of one of the fastest-growing companies in the country. And she? She was about to become a player in a game she never agreed to play. Because the boss she mistook for a waiter wasn't just watching her anymore. He was about to pull her into his world. And the question now wasn't whether Sarah would get the job, but whether she was ready for what came with it. Sarah arrived at Evolve Tech for the second interview with her nerves wrapped tight around her chest like a seatbelt before a crash. The invitation had been vague, more cryptic than formal, and unlike her first visit, this time no receptionist greeted her. No other candidates waited beside her. The lobby was oddly quiet. A man in a dark suit appeared, badge clipped to his lapel, and without much small talk, he led her past the elevators and into a private corridor that didn't show up on the company's public floor plan. The silence felt intentional, like the building was holding its breath. Sarah followed, feeling the tension in her shoulders rise with each step. She had applied for a marketing assistant role, not a position that warranted cloak-and-dagger treatment. But something about the way the man avoided eye contact, the way security cameras blinked in corners, made her think she'd stepped into something far beyond a simple job offer. The room they led her to was nothing like the sterile conference room from before. It was smaller, darker, more intimate, sleek modern panels, a single table, and a massive screen glowing with what looked like internal data dashboards. Nathan was already inside, seated at the far end of the table. He didn't smile. He didn't greet her. He simply gestured for her to sit. For a second, Sarah almost turned around. But something about his gaze, sharp, probing, and strangely vulnerable, anchored her to that chair. Then he spoke. Sarah, I need you to be honest with me. Have you spoken to anyone outside this company about your interview here? Her stomach flipped. "No," she said immediately. "Why would I?" He studied her. "You received an anonymous email. From inside. Someone we didn't authorize. I need to know if you've replied. If you forwarded it. Anything." Sarah blinked. Her fingers clutched the armrest.
No.
"I didn't respond. I swear." She wasn't lying. She had only read it. But now she realized it wasn't just some mysterious note of encouragement. It was bait. Or a breadcrumb. Or worse, evidence. Nathan leaned back. "There's a leak in this company. Someone close to me is feeding information to outside interests. And for some reason they picked you." Sarah's breath caught. "I don't understand. I'm nobody. I just applied for a job." Nathan's jaw tightened.
Exactly.
"That's why it worries me." Then, as if flipping a switch, his tone softened. "But you seem different, Sarah. You didn't panic when you made that mistake with me. You didn't fold when the interview got tough. And right now, you're holding yourself together better than some of my directors would in this room." He paused. "I think you're someone who's used to surviving storms." The words struck a chord she wasn't ready for. All those years of struggling, sacrificing, scraping by, they weren't invisible.
Not to him.
And now, somehow, they'd made her visible in a way she hadn't planned for. That day didn't end with a job offer. It ended with an ultimatum. Nathan asked her to come back, not as an employee, not yet, but as a temporary contractor embedded in the operations team. "You'll have access to documents," he said. "Not confidential, not illegal, but sensitive. I need someone without ties, someone no one's watching. And right now, that's you." Sarah walked out of that building not sure whether she'd been hired, recruited, or drafted into something way above her pay grade. But deep down, something told her this wasn't just about trust. It was about leverage. She was now part of something unfolding from the inside. A potential weapon. Or a scapegoat. Meanwhile, Lena, the operations head, had her own suspicions. She had noticed Nathan taking longer meetings in isolation, reviewing internal security logs himself, avoiding his usual team of advisors. That wasn't like him. And while he was known for being hands-on, this felt different. Secretive.
Desperate.
She started digging deeper, pulling up old access logs and email metadata. That's when she noticed it. A dormant employee account, someone who had supposedly left the company 6 months ago, suddenly active again. Logging in late at night, reviewing confidential code deployment schedules. But the activity didn't match the person's old digital footprint. Someone had spoofed it. Someone inside. And there, buried in the access logs, was a name she didn't expect to see. Sarah Brooks. Only Lena didn't know that Sarah had never logged in. She didn't have access to those systems. Someone was framing her. Or worse, using her presence as cover. Nathan, meanwhile, was fighting his own internal war. The board was pressuring him to finalize the merger with a European tech giant. On paper, it looked perfect: synergy, growth, expansion. But something felt wrong. Their security team had flagged discrepancies in the data that company shared. Duplicate accounts, ghost users, and whispers of AI misuse. Nathan suspected they were inflating their user base to pump their valuation. If he moved forward, Evolve Tech could be dragged into a scandal. But if he pulled out now, it could trigger a shareholder revolt. And with the board breathing down his neck, he needed allies. People he could trust. People like Sarah, unpolished, unconnected, but grounded. The twist came 3 days later. Sarah received a package at her apartment. No return address. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. "Be careful who you trust. The leak isn't new, and it doesn't end with hail." Her hands trembled. She slid the drive into her laptop, half afraid it would trigger a virus. But what came up was worse. Video footage, grainy, time-stamped, of private meetings in Nathan's office. Some were recent. Some years old. Some included board members. Others, people she didn't recognize. The files were labeled with strange symbols. One folder was locked. Another had her name on it. Someone was watching everyone. And now they were watching her. She slammed the laptop shut, heart racing. She was in the middle of something far more dangerous than corporate politics. There was manipulation at play, secrets traded like currency, and behind all the glass walls and tech talk was a conspiracy that went deeper than anyone had told her. And the worst part? She didn't know who was pulling the strings: Nathan, the board, the mystery informant, or someone she hadn't even met yet. The moment Sarah realized the flash drive wasn't just a threat but a lifeline, everything around her shifted. The floor beneath her apartment felt less like home and more like a target. She didn't sleep that night, too scared someone might knock, too wired to shut her eyes. The videos played over and over in her mind: covert recordings of closed-door meetings, confidential financial documents, whispered threats between people in suits who smiled for press releases but wielded destruction in private. Nathan's name appeared again and again, but never as the villain. If anything, he seemed like someone trapped, someone playing chess against an invisible opponent, someone desperately trying to stay 10 moves ahead before the board was flipped against him. But if that was true, if he wasn't the one manipulating her, then why had someone sent her this footage? And why now? The next morning, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She returned to Evolve Tech unannounced. The front desk hesitated at first. No badge, no appointment. But before they could fully turn her away, Nathan himself appeared in the lobby. His face paled when he saw her, not with surprise, but with worry. "You shouldn't be here," he said under his breath. "It's not safe." Sarah didn't flinch. "We need to talk. Alone." He paused, then nodded. 10 minutes later, they sat in a soundproof meeting room 3 floors underground. Sarah placed the flash drive on the table between them like a loaded weapon. "Someone sent this to me. I've seen the videos. I know what you're trying to stop. But you need to tell me everything. Right now." Nathan stared at the drive. His voice was tight, like he'd been carrying the weight of its contents on his back for years. "I knew this day would come. I just didn't think you'd be the one to bring it." Then he told her everything. The European merger was a trap. Not just a financial fraud, but a way to gain control of Evolve Tech's proprietary AI architecture. The foreign company had been infiltrating Evolve Tech for over a year, planting moles, recruiting insiders, and creating a shadow network that fed them internal data. It was all about intellectual property, code that could manipulate global social behavior using predictive analytics. Evolve Tech had developed it to improve mental health tools and social media algorithms. But in the wrong hands, it could be weaponized to sway elections, trigger mass panic, manipulate entire populations through their digital behavior. The flash drive Sarah received contained evidence, undeniable proof. Nathan had been gathering it secretly, unsure who he could trust, watching the board get compromised, watching even his own assistant start taking strange meetings. "I didn't plan to bring you into this," he said, his voice low. "But someone inside knew you were the last person they wouldn't suspect. And that made you valuable. That made you dangerous." Just then, an emergency alert blinked across the screen. Unauthorized access from Sarah's apartment IP. Whoever had sent the flash drive was already trying to destroy it. They knew she had it. Nathan swore, grabbed the drive, and activated a secure server upload. "We have 10 minutes before they try to shut us down internally." Sarah felt her breath catch again. Everything was moving fast, too fast, but she couldn't stop now. She helped him navigate the folder structure, unlocking files with her own name as the password. Inside were emails between board members discussing Sarah's movements, screenshots from surveillance cameras, and one file that made her blood run cold, a hiring recommendation letter drafted weeks before she even applied. It had her name, her resume, but she never wrote it. Someone had planted her into this from the very beginning. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a setup. Nathan's jaw dropped as he read it. "You weren't the leak, Sarah. You were the smokescreen. They knew you'd draw my attention. They wanted you to look like the threat so they could move behind the curtain." Before they could speak again, alarms blared. Someone was trying to breach the server room. Nathan stood, pressed a panic switch beneath the desk, and turned to Sarah.
"Go. Now."
"Take the emergency elevator. I'll stall them." She hesitated. "What about you?" He looked at her, calm despite the chaos. "They've already marked me. But you, You're the one who can finish this. Get this to the DOJ. The name you're looking for is Hale Industries. Everything starts and ends there. Sarah ran. The emergency elevator launched her upward like a rocket. By the time she reached the surface, security was swarming the building. She ducked into the crowd, heart pounding, phone gripped tight. She had already uploaded the data to a secure cloud and forwarded it to a journalist contact Nathan had prepped weeks ago. Within hours, the story broke across every major network. Global tech espionage scandal exposed. Hashtag tech scandal and hashtag evolve tech leak started trending on YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Videos of the board being escorted out in handcuffs surfaced. International warrants were issued. Hale Industries denied everything, but the proof was airtight. Sarah didn't return to Evolve Tech. She never saw Nathan again. Some say he disappeared, others that he entered witness protection. But months later, as Sarah quietly started working with a nonprofit that monitored ethical use of AI, she received a package. No return label. Inside, a single note. You didn't just save a company. You saved the future. And beneath the note, a USB key engraved with one word, trust. She stared at it, tears welling up, not out of fear or confusion, but out of awe. She had gone from nearly homeless to becoming the unwitting heroine of a tech conspiracy that almost rewired the world. All because of a mistake. All because she thought her boss was a waiter. So, the next time someone tells you a small moment can't change your life, remember Sarah. Because what seemed like an innocent job interview turned into a global takedown. And what looked like failure at first was really the beginning of something legendary. And now you know the answer to the question that brought you here. What happened when the poor girl mistook her boss for a waiter? The answer is everything.